let's turn it over to sadness. Z, let's talk Minnesota Wild. And actually, before we talk Minnesota Wild, let's talk Boston Bruins, because they their deadline was criticized by a lot of fans, and they pulled in a bona fide goal scorer. Talk about it.
Yeah. Actually, first of all, I have to say this every time now, but I don't take anyone serious who suggests that like their deadline should be criticized. Like, I get the Marchand thing, but like
it was
they chose a direction. They pulled in some really nice assets, including guys that could play now,
including a second round pick in like 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the March thing again. Obviously, people are gonna be upset about it, but it is what it is. But yeah, Marat Khusnutdinov in Boston has been really good. Now, after last week, they played Florida and they played Tampa Bay the first 2 games and like played really well, and it was great, and like they won both games. Yeah, they're back to being one of the worst hockey teams I've ever watched in my life. Oh my god, are they atrocious? They had 0 shot attempts the other night in the second period against Tampa Bay. Like, I mean, just a complete shit kicking. Or the third period, I can't remember which one. But it's bad again. They're really bad. Like, they're a very bad hockey team. But Marat is just given an elevated role. He's playing a lot more minutes. He's playing on the third line. He's in the wing, and he's getting a lot more offensive looks. Now he's got 2 goals, which doubled his season total. That being said, it's 2 shot attempts. It's 2 goals. Like that's a very key thing to remember. Is he's still shooting the exact same amount?
100%. That's 100%.
He's shooting 100% right now in Boston.
You know, Gretzky. How do we turn that into a Khusnutdinov quote? Like, instead of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, we're gonna make your next quote T-shirt just be Marat Khusnutdinov. You make 100% of the shots you do take.
Oh God!
Do it.
Rocky number 92.
I know you'll do it. Send me one. Send me an XL. Thank you.
I'll probably have some kind of Khusnutdinov apparel that I drink a million beers and design. But it's fascinating. He's playing right now on a line. It's him with Lauko and Elias Lindholm, which is the most ridiculous line I think I've ever seen constructed, and they're fucking awesome.
Dude. What? If you told, like, if I told you, let's say, like, in August, that was eventually going to be a line for the Boston Bruins, what line would you assume it is? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
3.
Given the state of their center depth, I just, like, it would be so hard for me to envision Lindholm being their 3C. Like, I'm saying before this season started, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in reality,
that's my only challenge with it.
There's a good chance that he's playing wing next year anyways.
Plus the Khusnutdinov excitement, like, I might have been tricked into thinking they could have been a second line.
Right.
And you could have also gone to 4th, because Khusnutdinov, if we said it a couple months ago, it's like, oh shit, Lindholm really fell off and it's the 4th line.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, again, though, like, he's obviously playing third line minutes. He's being utilized not just defensively or for faceoffs, which, I mean, even that was an adventure in its own right in Minnesota by the end. But I mean, he's playing like 13, 14, 15 minutes. He's getting offensive looks. That line specifically, like, they are just a force as far as just like relentless pressure on the forecheck and winning pucks back and cycling pucks. And like, he's clearly like taking this trade in stride, and his confidence level is just like, that like 5-game streak that we saw in Minnesota right before the 4 Nations, where he was legitimately just like dancing with the puck and like hitting people and like creating scoring chances. Like, he's doing that almost every time he's touching the puck now. He looks incredibly comfortable, so it's been great. On the flip side, again, like when we talked about the trade for Brazeau, I was surprised that it was like all of those 3 assets just for Brazeau. This is the thing that drives me crazy about like the John Hines Wild, is they really do not have any ability whatsoever to roll 4 lines, or he refuses to do it. Now, that being said, the last few games, hold on, they have had that 4th line actually look pretty good the last couple, and like Brasso, unfortunately, has just missed a couple tap-ins too. But if the idea was to bring in a big guy with good hands that can give you depth scoring, like he has to play at least 10 minutes. Like he has to. Like you're not going to get that fourth line to produce offense, especially if you're going to play in 5-6 minutes. It's just not going to happen. So that's why, like, for me, the big question mark with the trade is just like, I understand bringing in Brasso. I understand, like, you know, moving on. Like, if you can bring something in for Lauko or Khusnutdinov, you just, like, obviously there's not going to be a really big opportunity for them. At least you don't see it that way in your lineup. But like, those pieces being traded for each other just made no sense whatsoever. Like, if you're not going to roll fucking 4 lines and your fourth line's, like, really pigeonholed to, like, limited offensive looks, the guy you bring in is like Trennan, fourth line, or it's not Brasso. Like, again, like he played the most in Boston with fucking Elias Lindholm and Brad Marchand. Like, that's when he was playing the most. That's when he scored. Like, that was his line. Like, so it doesn't really make sense to bring him in for your fourth line when, like, what you're asking him to do a lot of nights isn't, like, in his wheelhouse, and he's not gonna score. Like, if you're utilizing, it's like at this point, I just feel bad because it's just like he's just getting shit on, and I get it because he's not producing. But, like, I don't see how this trade made sense as far as, like, who you're asking to do what. Like, it just didn't make sense.
Very weird across the board. Yeah, it sucks. I don't know, but you're happy. You got your boy Marat. Piss missile. Who's nuts? D's nuts.
And it is, I am officially worried because it doesn't sound like anyone's that close to returning from injury in Minnesota.
No, Brodeen's close.
Okay, Brodeen's close. Okay, at this point, I'm not even worried about the D anymore. I'm worried about this fucking offense.
Sure, but that's still, like, there's 3 big names that are out. One, he said, so Joe and I recorded earlier today the mailbag for this week and said maybe Wednesday he plays, but he'd be surprised if he's not playing this weekend. But there is no update on Ek or Kaprizov as it currently stands. Like, we don't know. We don't know. All we know is they're both expected back because, like, Guerin legitimately did not LTIR them because they're supposed to be back. He said the hope right now is, like, from last Tim and Russo heard, is Kaprizov skating the final week of March, which means sometime that week or the first week of April, he's back. That's probably enough for him. And Ek, like, we just don't know. But Ek, at least, if he comes back for game 1 of the playoffs, I'm not worried about him shaking off the cobwebs and going. Kaprizov needs to be back. If he is not back the first game of April, I'm going to be worried.
Yeah.
That's where I stand, at least.
Yeah. It's just like, and again, like, it goes back to that deadline thing too. And like, say, like, they were so, like, restricted to the cap. They didn't want to do the LTIR shit, obviously. And it's like, it's just so funny that not funny, but, like, before the season started, we're doing a prediction. Like, if they could at least be not as injured as they were this past season, and they were like, oh yeah, like, you want to see some crazy shit?
They're like, let's show you a taste of what it could look like and make you all excited, and then be like, oh wait, just kidding.
Let us all get injured at the worst time, as painful as possible. So I mean, at this point, last 10, they're 3-6-1 their last. Okay,
D, let's address this. This is important. So Keith Williams asks, has the Wild ever used LTIR? Maybe it's an owner thing. Wild have used LTIR a ton. They've never to date used it going into the playoffs. And again, there's a lot that goes into that. So, like, for people that maybe aren't familiar, if you do LTIR and you're using that to, like, open up cap space for the remainder of the season, that player cannot come back in the regular season, period. Mm-hmm. And there are, like, spot checks done. Like, people are watching. If you're ready to play, you're ready to play. You're out of LTIR by and large. The one, I mean, like, Kane and Kucherov, maybe they were ready a week sooner and they found a way to, like, you know, shimmy it, make it work. Like, the Stone injury was a legitimate injury. Like, he was hurt and timing worked out okay. For the Wild, I think they explored the idea, but when they know that Ek and Kaprizov are going to be back, how do you go to those players and be like, oh yeah, you're just going to chill for like a couple of weeks and, you know, we'll pull you back in as soon as the money's freed up. Like, that's just not how it works. And whoever you're going to pick up for that money, you'd rather have Kaprizov in than that player. So really, if you wanted big money, that was the only way to do it. With a guy like Eck, sure, it would have saved you $5 million. You could have brought in a supplemental player, but like, really, are you going to give up the assets to bring in a meaningful player? Or is it just another guy that's going to be kind of a spot filler like a Nyquist, right? Like, I think I agree with Guerin that this was not the year to push the chips in completely. I just think that the moves he made were weird.
Right.
Like, he didn't do anything crazy. I'm not like freaking out about the Khusnutdinov trade. I'm not freaking out about giving up a second for Nyquist. It's just, why even do it? You know? So the LTIR thing, I think if they thought that Eck or Kaprizov were going to be out up until the playoffs, they would have done it and they would have tried to make something happen. But they want to get these guys back because you're not going to find a replacement that's better than either of them, except for Brock Nelson, who, if you guys saw the asking price on him, if the Wild paid that, I would be furious. For the Avalanche, it makes sense because they can win the Cup. The Wild cannot win the Cup this year. Like, they're just not built that way.
Yeah, you're not a Brock Nelson away from winning the Stanley Cup. Yeah,
right. And for the Avalanche, the way they loaded up, I hate the trade long term for them. Short term, they crushed it. Like, they had, in my mind, the best deadline, period. Now, 2 years from now, probably won't be saying that. But for this season in particular, if they think they can win it, I love what they did. So it's tough. Like, I understand the frustration, especially like Keith brought it up, right? Has Wild ever done it? Like, there aren't many teams that have leveraged this because usually you're not in a position to do so. And this year, the Wild had a couple of options and it was clear that that wasn't going to be viable. Like, these players are going to be back with a couple of weeks to go. It's not happening. So it sucks. I'm frustrated for a lot of reasons, but not leveraging the LTIR is probably not like what I'm going to lean on and be mad about. Now, if either of them are out up until the playoffs, maybe I'm a little bit irked, but I think a lot of it's unknowns. I don't think that there's any way for them to forecast that. And again, the price tags that we saw this trade deadline, I don't want to pay those for a team that, like, maybe you're hoping you can win the first round. Like, that's just not worth it to me this season. Next year, completely different story. I have been a Bill Guerin defender since he got here. Next year, show me something or fuck off, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, at this point, because it's just frustrating given the fact that, like, knowing Bill Guerin, like, how he operates, let's say the injuries weren't at least as bad as they've been this year, and they were still, like, just chugging along and in like contention for like that second seed or for whatever. Like, you know, he would have made more moves. The money was just such a problem. The injury situation is legitimately insane. And like the fucking roster size shit. Like, there's been so many different like impediments to like going out and making these moves this year, especially coming in. Like, it was pretty unexpected that they were as hot as they were at one point. So but man, like, last 10, they're 3-6-1. And I'll tell you, they just look gassed. Like, the guys that are healthy, it seems like there's a bunch that are just running on fumes at this point. They can't score right now whatsoever. I mean, I pulled it up. Like, you got smoked 2 nights ago against St. Louis 5-1. You lose in overtime 3-2 to the Rangers. 2-1 shootout win against Colorado, which was great. Thanks, fucking Marty Natchez, for that backhand sauce pizza. That was an insane pass. And I mean, you lose at Pittsburgh 3-1, Vancouver 3-1. Like, the offense is just completely dried up to the point where, I mean, and like, by the way, if we're gonna go on the negatives, you know who's having a fucking great year? We've been shitting on for like 2 years now. Freddie Gaudreau now is 15-15. He's been
also Foligno too. Like,
yeah, Foligno's been great. Like, there's been a couple guys I expected.
Current state, people are still shitting on those contracts, and it's like, no, that's not the problem. It's that Guerin continues to double and triple and quadruple down on more and more of these guys. Like, the Trennian signing is maddening. And sure, it's easy to say in hindsight because he hasn't quite panned out this year. It's nothing against him as a player. It's more you have bolstered and overcommitted on this style of player. Why do you need to lock even more money in on yet another one of that same player? It doesn't make any sense to me. Then you go and add Brazeau and quadruple down. Like it's weird. Like I like all of the players individually. You got twice as many of them as you need. It's kind of like the Buffalo Sabres prospect pool. Like all of their prospects are sick. They all fill the exact same fucking need.
Yeah.
Like maybe we should do some swapping with the Sabres. Like take some of our depth guys, give us one or two of your sick prospects that you don't want. I would do horrible things for Zach Benson. Man, it's just things are down. Like basically we're banking on goaltending and blue line.
And it's looking bad. I mean, like Vancouver 6 points back. Well, they're in the second wild card, but St. Louis right now. So, like, this is where it comes back to. Though.
3 days ago, it was a 10-point cushion to be out of the playoffs. They are losing it so fast.
Yeah, and when you, especially, I just like pulled up specifically just because they played the other night, the St. Louis thing, right? So the Wild schedule, the rest of March, you've got LA, Seattle, Buffalo at home. Then you're in Dallas. Next night, you're back at home against Vegas. Then you play Washington. Then you play the Devils twice. Fucking St. Louis's schedule: Nashville, Vancouver, Chicago, Nashville, Montreal, Nashville, Colorado. Like so, dude, that's where like potentially like they've leaped you by the end of this month.
Dude, if Ryan Suter gets in and we don't,
I will lose my mind.
Now we're gonna get into prospect stuff later, but I gotta address a couple of these because I'm not sure I completely agree on some of it. So, like, here we go from Trav Zimmerman, which it looks like several people are agreeing. Realistically, Billy shouldn't sign Zeev until July. No need to burn a year off the ELC. Zero reason. The reason is he's not coming if you don't burn the year. If you make him wait until July, he's going to go back to college. Like, that is the lever that you pull to get these guys in. Am I crazy here, Z, for saying that? Like, I don't think there's a world where Zeev signs in July.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not. Plus, like, I was listening to my buddy Cam Robinson. He has a podcast with Chris Peters from Flow Hockey. And they were talking about William, like, they both agree like it's possible if he signs and like by the end of the season, obviously, and then legitimately has like not a significant major role, but a pretty substantial role even in the playoffs. And when you look at it now, I mean, we don't know what Eriksson, Ek, or Kaprizov are going to look like when they come back. I think it's I mean, we have like a pretty good idea, but like we can't guarantee anything, obviously. On this team that is absolutely starved for offense, if Zeev Bouillon can chip in a couple points here and there from the back end, that's fucking huge. Because I mean, anywhere.
He's immediately your power play quarterback.
Right, that's the thing. You're probably throwing that power play, that first power play unit immediately. Like, this is like where we're at with this offense. Is like they have absolutely nothing.
But the other thing to consider too, that like I at times blank on, and I know a lot of fans blank on or maybe are oblivious to altogether. Once the postseason hits, there is no salary cap. That's why the whole LTIR thing works. So the whole argument for like, oh, we're going to play this guy because we're paying him, that's out the fucking window. So like, yeah, to round out the end of the season, like they're going to give Zeev a couple games, and same thing like we saw with Faber, right? If things are going well enough, he'll keep playing. But come postseason, there's no dollars and cents rhyme or reason to who plays and who doesn't. You could easily see him in over a Merrill, over, whoever to play. And it's not going to be the same level of barrier that we've seen in the regular season, especially for a guy, unfortunately, like Juracek, which I said it recording with Joe earlier today. I'm going to say it here. I feel like you probably agree with me, but I'll let you rebuttal if you want. I love the Juracek trade value. You make that trade 9 out of 10 times, and the one time maybe you don't is when you're the Minnesota Wild and you just refuse to let him play. You're not going to give him time in Iowa. You're not going to give him time up here. Next season doesn't look much better for him. it's an awesome trade with bad timing.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point you just pull the trigger on it because you're not going to wait. So there's going to be other teams that are going to want to move in. I guess there were other teams who like potentially even offered more or whatever. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it is frustrating. He's just sitting in the press box. Hasn't played since what, like February 28th or something?
Well, it's not like he's not capable. We've seen him do decent.
He looked really good in the NHL, the small sample size that he had, especially when he came in at a time where they were like going just down murderer's row as far as opponents, at the start of their injury problem. And like there were a few games, he was the one player that looked pretty good. But you're just getting nothing, like no one's gaining anything from just sitting in the press box right now. I mean, I don't really know what I'm just let him go play in Iowa. I mean, I don't know. Like it's frustrating that he's just sitting there watching, but maybe it's a really weird season so far, like all around. But yeah, I am officially now worried about this, like whether or not they do make the playoffs, because it is far from a guarantee. And like again, the fact that they're playing this bad, they look this tired, and like they're 3-6-1 the last 10, while other teams are just like cooking right now too.
And I will say, like there are people that are trying to say too, like, oh, the Jiricek trade is so bad because you traded the first this year, you're not gonna make the playoffs. Like, dude, the way the Wild were playing, if we stayed healthy, like there's no reason for the front office to be like, well, let's be careful in case we don't make the playoffs. Like you can't predict these injuries. Shit sucks. Right. Like I'm not trying to sit here and convince you that it's like sunshine and flowers, but like that's a stretch to get mad about losing the first, because I love the trade in general. So it's like, yeah, it sucks that it's gone this route and we're going to miss the playoffs potentially, but I don't think that's a reason to criticize the trade.
Oh, yeah.